You ever wake up one day and realize that being this smart kid did absolutely nothing to prepare you for adulthood? Like, you could solve algebra at age 12, but now you're standing in your kitchen Googling, "Can you eat eggs that expired last week?" And somehow you Google it every single time, like the answer might magically change. You grew up thinking intelligence was a lifelong superpower, but adulthood is basically finding out the world is on expert mode, and you're still holding the controller upside down. It's not that you got dumber. It's that life stopped giving you instructions. If you're watching this, there's a good chance you've had this weird, uncomfortable realization. You used to be the smart kid, and now you're whatever this current version of you is. A person who opens the fridge, stares at it like it personally wronged you, then closes it without taking anything. A person who has favorite pens but can never find them. A person who was once a straight-A student but now gets overwhelmed by emails that say following up on this. You know that feeling, right? That quiet frustration that creeps in when you can't explain why normal adult tasks feel like boss-level missions from a video game you didn't sign up to play. You were the kid who always had potential, but these days even replying to a text on time feels like potential you're not sure how to unlock. You used to memorize whole chapters the night before an exam. Now you can't remember where you put your phone while you're literally holding it. You used to finish assignments early. Now you consider microwaving a meal preparation. And somewhere in the back of your mind, there's this little voice going, "Shouldn't I be better at life by now? Shouldn't I understand how to do taxes, pick a career path, meal prep, sleep properly, hydrate consistently?" Like, all the things actual adults apparently know? But instead you're here, feeling like you're juggling responsibilities with one hand tied behind your back, hoping no one notices you're improvising adulthood as you go. And honestly, you're not alone. Most smart kids grow up thinking they'll automatically become competent adults, only to discover that adulthood is a totally different game with completely different rules. This video gets you, and we're about to unpack why you feel this way, and why it's not even your fault. Alright, let's talk about the biggest mistake former smart kids make when they enter adulthood, and it's honestly kind of funny once you see it. You're still trying to treat life like it's school, and life is absolutely not school. School was predictable, structured, organized. Everything was broken into neatly labeled chunks like a lunchbox. But adulthood is like someone shook the lunchbox, threw half the food away, and said, "Good luck." Also, the assignment is due yesterday, and no one knows where the rubric is. See, smart kids grow up thinking success comes from knowing the right answers. So when adulthood throws situations at you that don't even have answers, like choosing a career, setting boundaries, or deciding if you should text back "K" or "OK," your brain short circuits. Instead of adapting, you do what you were trained to do. You try to think your way through it. You make 5-year plans, then rewrite them, then reorganize them in Notion, then color code them, then never actually start anything because the plan isn't perfect yet. It's adorable and completely useless. Another classic mistake? Believing that because you were good at learning quickly as a kid, you should still be instantly good at everything now. So when you try something as an adult, budgeting, cooking, waking up at a normal hour, and you're not magically excellent at it, you immediately assume something is wrong with you. No, nothing is wrong. You're just experiencing something new. The beginner phase, something school never really let you practice. And let's not ignore the biggest trap of all, the smart kid overthinking spiral. Instead of doing a task, you dissect it like you're writing a thesis paper on the psychological barriers to taking out the trash. You analyze every outcome, every scenario, every possible failure, until the task feels so big and heavy that you avoid it entirely. Then you feel guilty. Then you procrastinate more. Then you feel more guilty. It's like emotional inception with fewer cool fight scenes. So yeah, the mistake isn't that you lost your intelligence. It's that you're using the same strategies that worked in a controlled, predictable environment, in a world that is absolutely none of those things. Here's the part nobody tells you. Your real goal isn't to be productive, perfect, or the genius everyone thought you were as a kid. What you're actually craving, the thing underneath all the procrastination, stress, and existential Googling, is control. Smart kids grow up getting their confidence from competence. Being good at things wasn't just a skill. It was your entire identity. So now, when adulthood feels messy and unpredictable, it doesn't just confuse you. It makes you feel like you're losing yourself. You're not trying to master tasks. You're trying to feel grounded, stable, like you're steering your own life instead of being dragged behind it like someone tied you to the bumper. Deep down, you want independence, confidence, and the peace that comes from knowing you can handle whatever shows up, even when there's no guidebook. And the good news? You absolutely can. You just need a new strategy. All right, here's where everything finally clicks into place. The biggest insight, the one that explains why smart kids grow up to be confused adults, is this. Smart kid success equals external structure. Adult success equals self-created structure. Asterisk, asterisk. That's the whole plot twist. That's the cheat code nobody told you about. When you were younger, your entire environment was designed to help you succeed. You had teachers laying out the next steps, schedules telling you when to show up, assignments with clear instructions, grades that instantly showed your progress, parents reminding you of deadlines. Even your day was chopped into neat little blocks. Math, English, lunch, science, go home, sleep, repeat. You lived inside built-in structure. Your brain thrived in that. It learned to depend on that. But adulthood? Adulthood doesn't come with a syllabus. Nobody gives you feedback, deadlines, or gold stars for effort. Your boss won't say, "Great job," every time you reply to an email. No one is checking your planner. And certainly no one is assigning you step-by-step instructions for how to be a functioning human. Chapter 1. Suddenly, life becomes one giant open-ended project. And that's exactly where the smart kid brain begins to malfunction. Smart kid brains are like high-performance engines. Super fast, super powerful, extremely capable, but also extremely sensitive to road conditions. When the path is clear and structured, you fly. But when the path is wide open, vague, unpredictable, and filled with 10,000 possible choices, the engine starts spinning in place. This is why adulthood feels confusing, because the skill you actually needed wasn't intelligence, it was self-structuring. Nobody teaches you that. Let's break this down deeper. 1. Structure was your invisible superpower. Think about why you did well as a kid. You weren't magically disciplined. You weren't gifted with motivation. You weren't naturally organized. You just lived in a world where everything was organized for you. In school, even procrastination worked because the deadline existed. You could ignore the project for 2 weeks, but the night before, boom, structure kicked in. Your brain snapped into focus. You delivered. Now imagine the same situation in adulthood. A vague goal with no due date, no external accountability, and no clear steps. Your brain just idles, like a car waiting for someone to put it in drive. 2. Smart kids learn to excel at known problems. The school system is predictable. The rules don't change. The test is based on the chapter. Success is measurable. But adulthood? Adulthood is like someone keeps hitting shuffle on the rules. You're solving new problems all the time. What career actually fits me? How do I manage stress? How do I stop doom scrolling until 2 a.m.? Why does filling out this form require a PhD? These are not problems with clear answers. These are not multiple choice questions. These are emergent problems. You figure them out while doing them. But smart kids were trained to get clarity before starting. Adults get clarity by starting. That's a totally different approach. 3. Overthinking becomes your worst enemy. Smart kids were rewarded for thinking things through. You got praised for good reasoning, careful planning, deep analysis. So now, as an adult, what do? You overplan, overprepare, overanalyze, overthink. You create 47-step plans for tasks that require 5 steps. You research productivity tools for 2 hours instead of doing the actual task. You turn decisions like, "What should I eat?" into internal TED Talks. Your brain is trying to think its way into feeling safe, because structure gave you safety. But adulthood doesn't give you structure. So your brain compensates by creating internal structure through overthinking, which doesn't work, because mental structure without action is just anxiety wearing a lab coat. You can't think your way out of uncertainty. You can only act your way into clarity. 4. The path to adult competence is completely backwards from school. In school, learn, prepare, study, practice, perform. In adulthood, start, mess up, adjust, repeat, improve. Smart kids hate step 2. Step 2 feels like failure. But here's the big awakening. Adults get good at things through being bad at them. There's no test to study for. There's only iteration, trial, error, course correction. This is deeply uncomfortable for people who grew up defined by correctness. But once you embrace experimentation instead of perfection, adulthood becomes way easier. 5. Your environment is stronger than your intelligence. This is the part that blows people's minds. You think your struggles are about discipline or motivation. They're not. They're about environment. Put a smart kid in structured surroundings, and they shine. Put them in chaotic, unstructured surroundings, and they crumble, not because they're incapable, but because their brain needs cues, boundaries, and external anchors. This is why setting simple routines, small clear goals, mini deadlines, visual cues, and constraints works brilliantly for you. You're not weak. You're simply optimized for clarity. Once you give your brain clarity, it gives you capability. 6. The real adult upgrade is becoming your own teacher. Not literally. You don't need to grade your laundry or write lesson plans for your dishes. But you do need to give yourself structure, boundary, small tasks, feedback, visible, progress, direction, definitions of done. That's what teachers gave you. That's what you're missing now. You're not supposed to magically know how to handle everything. You're supposed to create the conditions where handling things becomes easy. That's what adulthood actually requires. 7. When you master self-structure, your old intelligence finally comes back online. This is the beautiful part. You didn't lose your intelligence. It didn't evaporate or downgrade or disappear in your sleep. It just got buried under chaos. But once you create a little structure, even super tiny structure, your brain immediately unlocks the sharpness you thought you lost. Because your brain was never the problem. The system was. Give it clarity, and it performs. Give it boundaries, and it thrives. Give it small goals, and it builds momentum. Adult competence is less about being smart and more about giving your smart brain the rails it needs to run smoothly. Once you learn how to create your own structure, adulthood stops feeling like a confusing maze and starts feeling like a map you can actually read. And that's when this smart kid finally evolves into the capable adult. Let's play out a scene that might feel a little uncomfortably familiar. You wake up one morning and decide, today, I'm turning my life around. You're feeling motivated, refreshed, inspired by absolutely nothing in particular. Maybe a YouTube video at 2 a.m. or a random quote you saw on Instagram that said something like, "Discipline is choosing what you want most over what you want now." You were like, yes, true, I choose greatness. So you grab your notebook, the fancy one you bought specifically for when your life gets serious, and you write a to-do list that could single-handedly overwhelm a small country. Clean entire room, organize closet, start that big project, meal prep for the week, fix sleep schedule, go to the gym, do skincare, drink water, figure out life purpose. You stare at the list like it's the 10 commandments of productivity. You're ready. You're pumped. You are an unstoppable machine. Then you decide to just check your phone for a second. Suddenly it's 2 hours later, and you're watching a video of a baby goat learning to jump. You're emotionally invested. You're rooting for this goat like it's training for the Olympics. Then guilt shows up. You reopen the list and immediately feel like you've ruined your life. You think, why am I like this? I used to be good at things. I used to be productive. I used to win spelling bees. Now you're staring at your messy room, overwhelmed, disappointed, and ready to give up entirely. But let's rewind the same day. And instead of trying to fix your entire existence, you give yourself one tiny structure. Clean your desk for 5 minutes. That's it. No perfection, no pressure, no life-changing transformation. Just 5 minutes. You set the timer. You start. You finish. Suddenly your room looks slightly better, your brain feels slightly clearer, and you feel slightly more in control. You ride that tiny wave and spend another 5 minutes starting the project you've been avoiding. And weirdly, it works. Not because you changed, but because the task got structure and your brain finally had something to hold on to. Here's the part where things stop being emotional philosophy and turn into something you can actually do. Because the truth is, smart people don't need motivation, they need direction. So here's a simple system that works with your brain, not against it. Don't overhaul everything at once. Choose one category: room, work, health, finances, anything. When you try to fix everything, your brain freezes. When you pick one lane, it moves. If you tell yourself, clean the room, your brain pulls the fire alarm. If you tell yourself, throw away 5 things, your brain says, okay, fine. Small tasks bypass the overwhelm switch. Not 25 minutes. Not 1 hour. 5. Because 5 minutes is just long enough to begin, but short enough that you won't negotiate with yourself. This builds trust with yourself. The moment you overdo it, you activate perfectionism and crash later. Consistency beats intensity. Write down everything you completed, even the tiny stuff. Smart people tend to remember failures and ignore progress. Fix that bias. The goal isn't streaks. The goal is returning after you fall off. Because life isn't about never messing up. It's about reducing the downtime between "I fell off" and "I'm back." All right, here's a trick that will glue this entire concept into your brain, something I call the 90-second reset. It works because it breaks the smart kid overthinking cycle before it spirals. Here's how it goes. Anytime you feel overwhelmed, stuck, or like you're drifting into that "I should be doing more with my life" void, pause for a moment and ask yourself one simple question. What is the next tiny, non-painful action I can take in the next 90 seconds? Not the whole task, not the final outcome, just the next micro step. Something so small your brain can't protest it. The magic is that 90 seconds is too short for your perfectionism to load, but long enough to break the freeze state. It tricks your brain out of panic mode and into motion, and motion is what rebuilds confidence. You're basically saying to your brain, "Relax, we're not climbing Everest. We're just putting on the shoes." Do this once or twice a day, and you'll start noticing something wild. You stop treating life like a giant exam you haven't studied for. You start treating it like a series of tiny, doable actions. Remember this mantra. If I can do something in 90 seconds, I can change my direction today.
All right, here's a trick that will glue this entire concept into your brain, something I call the 90-second reset. It works because it breaks the smart kid overthinking cycle before it spirals. Here's how it goes. Anytime you feel overwhelmed, stuck, or like you're drifting into that "I should be doing more with my life" void, pause for a moment and ask yourself one simple question. What is the next tiny, non-painful action I can take in the next 90 seconds?
Not the whole task.
Not the final outcome, just the next micro step. Something so small your brain can't protest it. The magic is that 90 seconds is too short for your perfectionism to load, but long enough to break the freeze state. It tricks your brain out of panic mode and into motion, and motion is what rebuilds confidence. You're basically saying to your brain, "Relax. We're not climbing Everest. We're just putting on the shoes." Do this once or twice a day, and you'll start noticing something wild. You stop treating life like a giant exam you haven't studied for. You start treating it like a series of tiny, doable actions. Remember this mantra. If I can do something in 90 seconds, I can change my direction today. That's your anchor. Use it anytime life feels too loud. So here's the truth. If you've spent most of your life being the smart one, adulthood was never going to feel normal. You went from a world with gold stars, clear instructions, and teachers who told you exactly what to do, to a world where you are apparently the teacher, principal, janitor, and student all at once. But that doesn't mean you're failing. It means you're recalibrating. Once you stop trying to be perfect and start focusing on tiny, consistent actions, everything shifts. You feel calmer. You feel capable. And slowly, you start trusting yourself again, not because you suddenly have everything figured out, but because you can handle things one tiny step at a time. And honestly, that's all adulthood really is. If you found this helpful, feel free to stick around. There's a whole library of videos just like this, practical, honest, slightly sarcastic, waiting for you. Watch another one, or save this for later if you want. No pressure. You've already done enough for today.